And I'm joined with Lynn and Grayson, and I'd like for them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their relation to autonomous vehicles.
Hi, Len Becker with HNTB, Vice President. We have the privilege of working very closely with the Florida Department of Transportation. We serve as their consultant around transportation technology. And one of those is helping them prepare for autonomous technology and how it's going to impact transportation systems. Thanks. Another way that we serve the transportation community and local communities is through MPOs. In fact, we had the opportunity recently again to work with the Florida Department of Transportation to put out a policy guideline to help MPOs start thinking about the uncertainty of the future. We saw a chart earlier that showed maybe 90% autonomy by 2030. Others project 15% or 20% autonomy by 2030. There's a lot of variability there. So we help communities, we help DOTs across the country, right here in Florida, but across the country, plan for that uncertainty and the scenarios that will go along with that.
Yeah, and you're doing a phenomenal job with that. I'm Grayson Brulte. I'm the co-founder and president of Brulte & Company. We're an autonomous vehicle advisory and strategy company, and I have the pleasure of working on Autonomous Florida with Chris Emanuel.
One of the things that the Chamber has done is put together an organization called Autonomous Florida, and we've divided it up into 3 subgroups of things that Florida needs to get right in order to embrace autonomous vehicles and have those deployments here. One is a pro-autonomous regulatory structure. Another is a pro-autonomous business climate. But the last one is a public acceptance, making sure that people are ready to hop into these vehicles when they're ready to have us. And one fantastic partner we've had is the Society of Automotive Engineers International. And I'd like to thank for a second Mark, Mary, and Marcy from SAE. They have been a tremendous partner of the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and they've helped provide those autonomous vehicles that we'll all be riding in just a bit. I'd like to touch on your thoughts on public acceptance, why that's important, why people need to see this technology before they can build for it, plan for it.
And sure, so the public tends to fear what they don't know, and right now the industry is mostly driven by engineers who think that they can live in a vacuum and bring the technology out and say, abracadabra, here we are. But the truth is, if the public does not accept that technology, the entire autonomous vehicle industry is out of business. And so what we're doing with SAE is getting the public comfortable. And I believe the best way to get the public comfortable is by allowing them to go for rides, experience a ride around Babcock, experience a ride around a city, and then ask questions and learn about the technology and really take the technology and personalize it to a place where you can understand it. Don't just say, oh, this is going to go around this, and really communicate with people. Understand, well, if you need to go to dialysis, or if you like to have, my grandma was like, I'm going to have a gin and tonic. This is going to be great. And just all these different experiences. And that's really what we're trying to do is build public trust and acceptance of this technology that will change every life of every single resident around the world.
Yeah, really excited about what the SAE is doing. They came to Tampa and did one of their experiences with the folks in Tampa. Had rave reviews. In fact, Sue Charzan, who's a communications director for the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, her father and her son were in one of these vehicles together. And they were talking about it, and they captured that on camera to see the generational differences. And her father was a little uncertain at the beginning, but by the end of the trip, they were dialoguing about things that they were going to do this weekend, and he realized that this was a mode of transportation that allowed him to experience life in a fuller way. Some other things that are going on that are really exciting in this space, Voyage is an autonomous mobility company that's launching their service up in the villages. And they've worked very closely with the villages to understand what the village users are looking for. So right now they're focusing on a specific community within the villages where they're going to launch basically on-demand mobility in Chrysler Pacificas, right? That's their Generation 2 vehicle that will come in. They'll initially have a driver, if you will, a custodian in the vehicle. But just a few years down the road, maybe even by the end of 2019, those drivers will be removed. They'll go back to an operations center, back in a warehouse somewhere to help those vehicles if they get in trouble. So I think as people are exposed to them and they realize the way they can optimize and make our time more efficient, as long as it's safe, I think we're seeing a lot more acceptance.
So SAE has come up with the different autonomous levels, the way to rate these different vehicles. And there's a lot of interest in the last 2 levels, SAE Level 4 and SAE Level 5. The Level 5 is best described as all autonomous, all the time, anywhere you want it. But level 4 is kind of that sweet spot of autonomous in certain areas, certain deployments, or in certain spots. Could you all touch on what kind of opportunities there are for those, not quite the car that does everything, but the vehicle that can do some things really, really well?
You're seeing the vehicle that can do some things really well. The best example is the Waymo vehicle in Arizona. It's performing really well. Waymo last week had a historical moment where they're allowing the public to take rides and hail, sort of like an Uber. That's a big historical moment, and they're running that in a geofenced 200 to 300 square mile radius around Phoenix, Arizona. And hopefully at some point that Waymo will start operating in Florida, in the Orlando and Miami regions. So they'll start to run in geographical regions. And then as the technology is perfect in those regions, you'll see them eventually expand out. I think in Florida, the giant opportunity is if you can connect the regions. You connect Miami to Naples, to Palm Beach, to Orlando, to Tampa. And then you connect that to the Brightline, you can have the seamless experience. And for the piggybacking on the tourism industry in this state, they fly into Miami, they have a great experience in Miami, or maybe they take an autonomous Waymo down to the Keys, take it back to Miami, hop on a Brightline, go to Palm Beach. You just have this whole experience. The tourism is not contained in certain pockets. They can come experience the whole state. And I think that's one of the great advantages to Florida is the infrastructure and then the tourism. How great would that be when we have tourists that come to Florida? And I'm going to become a Florida resident next year, so I couldn't be more prouder. Where they come out and they say, wow, this is really cool. I went to Florida. Oh, and guess what? I rode in an autonomous vehicle. Well, did you see Mickey Mouse? No, I rode in an autonomous vehicle. And then we go to just create this really positive message, and that's really what we want. We want individuals that come to the state to go home with this positive message and these positive memories. And that will start helping that public acceptance and adoption as they go home with really happy stories.
So I should note that Grayson is coming to us from Beverly Hills, California. Aren't you excited about that? That the brain trust of the West Coast, and I think he's just going to be one of the first to make that transition to Florida as we lead the globe in the adoption of technology. As we think about technology and autonomous vehicles that do things really well, one of the things we're seeing is early adoption are AV shuttles. So right here today, Gainesville, University of Florida and the city of Gainesville are planning an autonomous shuttle deployment. Jacksonville is going to transform their Skyway project with the Ultimate Urban Connector. If you don't know about that project, Google it. It is super cool on how they're going to use an autonomous vehicle on their current Skyway system, but then also provide access down to the local road system to connect their downtown. The Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, HART, in downtown Tampa is creating an autonomous vehicle shuttle that's going to connect certain areas of the central business district. So, Chris, that's an example of autonomous technology that's really good at certain things, right? That circulator motion of moving people from destination hubs. That's a great early adoption. I think as the vehicles get smarter and smarter, as we get more mapping information, we'll see that expand. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is autonomy, it's complex. It is very complex, and that's why we're seeing companies like Voyage focus on in a specific geographic area, or downtowns map out and plan a shuttle service for a specific location. It reduces the complexities, allows them to focus on the things they're really good at.
And the interesting thing about Voyage, which is really, I think it's important to keep in mind, is the business aspect of it. Where there's a race, everybody wants to be the Uber of autonomous driving. That's the big thing, everyone wants to be that. Where I believe the business cases are going to be made in niches. And so Voyage carved out this niche with retirement communities. And in order to get exclusivity, they're giving the villages as an equity shareholder, and they're causing these really great business relationships. And you're running in a controlled environment, but it's a niche business that the Waymos of the world won't want to go in. And with the amount of planned communities in Florida, they can scale it into a pretty healthy business.
The other thing that's cool about Voyage, I want to make sure we don't miss, is Voyage is using autonomous technology, but they're also using connected vehicle technology. So what does that mean? They're hanging sensors on utility poles, traffic lights, other places that communicate with their vehicle. It helps them see their surroundings, understand what they're going to have to, what that autonomous vehicle is going to have to navigate better. And as a transportation professional, that's one of the things that really excites me is autonomous vehicles. As a consumer, I can't wait to be able to do other things than drive when I'm in a vehicle. But that connectivity is going to help us to drive efficiency through our transportation infrastructure. It's also going to really enhance safety. And that's a really cool model of how they're using autonomous technology and connected vehicle technology.
I think it's fair to say that the modern American city is based around a car. You look around the roads, the parking lots, the parking garages, and all of those things. It's easy for me to picture what a Babcock looks like when you're designing with AVs in mind. What are the opportunities when AVs come to a place that was designed for something that's parked, that's manned, and that's pretty stationary?
So currently, I live in Beverly Hills, and we're surrounded by Los Angeles. And the biggest issue that I believe that fully autonomous vehicles will reduce traffic. In LA, for some reason, it's a funny game to see how many cars can run the red light at an intersection. And it starts these backups that lead to accidents. Or in California, we have, in most states you have DUIs. In California we have, I forget the technical thing, it's basically people smoke out and get high and drive, and it's causing lots of accidents. And so when you eliminate impaired drivers, and you eliminate individuals think it's funny to run red lights, or that sit there and talk on their phone or text. Think about the traffic flow when the vehicles are talking to one another and they're going at the same pace. How many more vehicles that you can get on that road? That starts to change everything. And you'll probably dramatically reduce traffic in Los Angeles. Because I believe that one of the biggest causes of traffic is distracted driving. It's not, the traffic's not optimized. And then if we can go one step further and then optimize the traffic lights, for real-time artificial intelligence, where they're based on real-time traffic flows, not actually on set timers, you could reduce traffic. And that will just change what quality of life is in Los Angeles or any other major metropolitan city that has large traffic. Atlanta has traffic problems, or Orlando has traffic problems, Miami has traffic problems. Imagine that environment, it makes it a really livable city.
I can't wait to live in the environment that Grayson and Commissioner Kegel earlier described. Isn't that exciting to think about what that could look like? What's it going to be like, Chris? Transformative is what it's going to be like. When autonomous starts to do things that current cars that are sitting do, it becomes transformative. Think about your cities with the transformation of parking garages and parking along streets. What happens when those get converted to roadside cafes? What happens when those parking garages get infilled with new development opportunities? We heard a lot about, affordable housing. What happens when those get to be converted to affordable housing so that we can bring people into the workforce and they have a viable place to live? It's transformative. As Grayson said, from a safety perspective, so here in Florida, we had over 3,600 people who lost their lives in traffic fatalities last year. That's unacceptable. So it can be transformative in terms of the safety of those that are on the roadways and what that can look like. I agree with Grayson that long-term, traffic's going to get better when we think about autonomous vehicles. I think short-term, vehicle miles traveled could spike. And we actually could see more, not necessarily more congestion, but more demand on the traffic system. Why? Because those that have been held back because their transportation disadvantaged or challenged, they now are empowered, right, to travel, to be out on the roadways. So it's going to take time for us to understand how do we plan for that, how do we integrate that so we have efficient movement of people as we're getting more and more of our citizens who can be out there and not have those limitations in transportation and mobility.
Think about another transformative aspect. If you look at like a single mother, lower income, and if she has multiple kids and one kid has ballet and another kid has soccer, another kid has baseball, and she can't get them all at one time, you could put each one of those kids in an AV and send them to their practice. Or if they go to an after-school program, and think about how it changes those kids' lives. Or if the child wants to go to a museum, they're no longer limited, can I afford to get to that museum? That ride could either be subsidized through a sponsorship or through a city or a county and allow that child to go to a museum and experience something. Or if a child's never been to a beach. So you're basically, I believe that from a child's aspect of it, that the autonomous vehicle creates this world of discovery. So for a lot of kids, books were that discovery, or now it's video games. But imagine if you put that child in that autonomous vehicle and they can go see a historical site. And then what's going to happen up here, we don't know. They can go on to change the world because it's that one experience they had. Like we talk a lot about it in Los Angeles, where a lot of the children in the inner city have never been out to the desert. It's a 45-minute drive, but they've never been out to the desert. Wow. And they could have see a cacti for the first time and just transform them. We don't know. It's going to unlock worlds of opportunity for children. I think we'll be one of the greatest beneficiaries of autonomous vehicles.
And it might freak some of you out to think about putting your child into an autonomous vehicle, right, and sending them off. But when you think about that, these are really smart people, right? There's going to be some type of visual recognition on your smart device that says my child has entered into that vehicle. You'll be able to track it. You'll have video surveillance. Those are the kind of things that we can anticipate between now and 2030 that can start to really create opportunities for families to be more mobile independently.
Yeah, and like I have a 4-year-old now, and I would put her in a vehicle by herself to send her to preschool. But now when she comes 15, 16, 17, Dad's gonna have the dad button. Oh, you're going to your boyfriend's house, come home. So I'm looking forward to that.
Just out of curiosity, how many people in this audience have been in an autonomous vehicle before, by show of hands? Okay, we've got about a fifth of the room here. I think what you'll find when you experience one of these cars, the first couple minutes is a little odd, a little terrifying. You don't quite know what's going on. The next couple minutes are fascinating, and just like Sid Kitson said before, the last little bit, you kind of forget that you're in an autonomous vehicle. And I think that's a pretty exciting opportunity for you to have a little bit less stress in the commute, a little bit more time there. What kind of opportunities are there inside these vehicles when your hands are off the wheel and you don't have to worry about it as much?
I think the biggest one is everybody's like, oh, they're going to be work vehicles. I don't necessarily believe that there'll be mobile offices. There'll be movie theaters on wheels, and you'll have all your entertainment there to watch and relax. You will have opportunities to sleep. And I think that going back into my niche theory, going around tourism, if you're going to Napa Valley to go wine tasting, and you'll arrive at your hotel and they'll say, hello, Mr. Emmanuel, we have your itinerary here, and you'll get a notification in your room. Your vehicle will be down there at 9 a.m. We'll have all your wine tastings mapped out for you. Oh, and the vehicle will be designed so you can look at each other. But the killer aspect of that is you'll have a wine fridge in that vehicle. And so as you buy wine on your tour and you put it in there, it'll be on ball bearings so the wine will not rattle. And then when your vehicle comes back to the hotel, they'll store that wine for you and ship it home. So you eliminate all the friction. And so you start looking at all these different experiences of eliminating friction and creating value, because now that's great for you. You're not driving, you're having a good time, and for the wineries, you're more inclined to spend more money. So it's a win across the board.
I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I'm getting the signal from the back that we've got to cut this conversation off. I hope that all of you will join us after this event at 3 o'clock. We're having those demonstration rides with a Transdev Easy Mile and with the Society of Automotive Engineers. They brought a Perona Robotics Land Rover. And I hope that each of you can see these technologies for themselves. If you would, please join me in thanking our panelists